The Sunday school lesson for November 26, 2023 is Freedom to Edify. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 23 through chapter 11, verse 1. To the viewers and subscribers, welcome to my channel, The Backstory and More. If you are interested in knowing what happens before each Sunday school lesson, you are at the right place. Please do me a favor this week and share this video with one other person. Thank you so much in advance for your support. The backstory takes us to 1 Corinthians. The city of Corinth. The city of Corinth was one of the great centers of commerce in the Mediterranean world of the 1st century AD. It was located near a narrow strip of land, an isthmus, that connected two major land masses. The city had a harbor for the Saronic Gulf and Aegean Sea to the east, and another harbor for the Gulf of Corinth and Adriatic Sea to the west. Maritime traffic between Asia and Rome had a choice of routes: either the dangerous and longer route around the Peloponnesian Peninsula or the shortcut of a 4-mile limestone trackway between Corinth's two harbors. Merchants choosing the latter would pay to have their ships hauled in their entirety from one harbor to the other on this road. Like many seaport cities, Corinth was quite worldly and eclectic in nature. Pagan temples and the idolatry they represented characterized the city, according to Acts chapter 17, verse 16. The contents of 1 Corinthians indicate that many in the church there had struggled to overcome practices of their former pagan lifestyles. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 through 11. Having planted the church in Corinth on his second missionary journey about AD 52, Paul found it necessary to write to its members while he was in Ephesus on his third journey, AD 56. Paul was headed toward Corinth at the time, according to Acts chapter 20, verses 1 through 3. But Ephesus was several days away by sea travel, and the situation couldn't wait for a personal visit. Correctives and clarifications. Reports had come to Paul regarding needed correctives and clarifications in Corinth. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 11. In 1 Corinthians 8, Paul had introduced the difficult issue for that time of eating meat that had been offered on pagan altars to idols. Meat that was left over from a pagan sacrifice initiated by a worshiper who had brought the sacrificial animal was at the disposal of the officiating priests. What they couldn't eat personally, they would sell in the marketplace. Such meat would be less expensive than other meat because the pagan priests didn't have any investment to recover. Some Christians wondered about the propriety of buying such meat. In doing so, were they participating in pagan worship and thus compromising their witnesses for Christ? In this regard, Paul emphasizes 2 points in 1 Corinthians chapter 8. The first is the awareness that an idol is nothing, 8 and 4. Therefore, those who are mature in knowledge on this point were free to eat such meat. Paul's second point counterbalances the first. Be careful, however, that the exercise of your rights does not become a stumbling block to the weak, 8 and 9. This stresses the importance of demonstrating concern for those having a weak conscience. Such a person might witness a fellow believer eating meat that had been offered to idols and thereby be drawn back into idolatry. Paul had more to say on this issue, and that is today's text. The Sunday school lesson begins with the next frame. Verse 23. I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. Verses 24 through 26. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. Eat anything sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience. For the earth is the Lord's, and everything in it. Verse 27. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is put before you without raising questions of conscience. Verse 28. But if someone says to you, this has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. Verses 29 through 30. I am referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. For why is my freedom being judged by another's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because of something I thank God for? Verses 31 through 33. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks, or the church of God, even as I try to please everyone in every way. For I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. Chapter 11, verse 1. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. A brief summary. In wrapping up the discussion about food offered to idols, Paul repeated his response to chapter 6, verse 12 slogan of some Corinthians, I have the right to do anything. Forgiveness is not the same as license. We must think of the good of others in using our freedom. Philippians chapter 2, verse 4. Such was the practice of Paul as it was of Jesus himself. Paul's solution demonstrated an artful balance of responsibility and freedom. First, the Corinthians could buy what they wanted from the meat market without asking its source. But if the proprietor said it was meat from a sacrifice, they should not buy it. The same don't ask if you don't want to know principle applied when invited to a person's home for a meal. Thank you so much for watching. Join me soon for the next backstory and more. Stay safe and may God bless.